Today I am going to go through my Pink Floyd vinyl collection. I've already done videos for my Pink Floyd cassettes and my Pink Floyd CDs. I'm not sure why it's taken me so long to get around to my vinyl, but here we are. Pink Floyd is one of my top 5 bands. I think definitely my favorite, what you might call progressive band. It was my dad's favorite band growing up. His name was Floyd. I don't think it had anything to do with that, although it certainly helped. So my first exposure to Pink Floyd was Dark Side of the Moon, and my dad also had The Wall. So I remember listening to those albums growing up and thinking how cool they were. I'm going to start in chronological order with Piper at the Gates of Dawn. This is the remastered version, which was released a few years back. And obviously the only album where the compositions are all Syd Barrett, and this was released in 1967, so it's got a very definite psychedelic kind of whimsical flavor to it. Very different from anything else in Pink Floyd's catalog, although it's definitely an outstanding album. This is the second Pink Floyd album, which is A Saucerful of Secrets. And this particular copy is on the Tower label. And it was produced by Norman Smith, who I believe was an engineer on some of the Beatles records. And this is the remastered vinyl copy of that. Next we have the soundtrack to More, which I find enjoyable. My favorites on here are probably Cirrus Minor, the Nile song, and Cymbeline. Cymbeline is probably the most popular selection off this particular album. This is either Ummagumma or Ummagumma, whichever way you choose to pronounce it. This might be my favorite Pink Floyd cover. Some people might say Dark Side of the Moon or Animals, but I think this cover where it just kind of goes on into infinity is very cool. This is the Harvest Records version, so the cover of Gigi or Gigi, whatever it is blanked out. And the first disc is live, the first Pink Floyd live disc. This is on the Harvest label. And then the second disc, it's almost, to me, sort of like the Kiss solo albums, although a single disc version whereby each band member was allowed to contribute half a side's worth of solo material. It's not my favorite stuff. I could take it or leave it. I think David Gilmour's guitar stuff is okay. I think that probably, I don't know, Sisyphus is all right, but you know, Grantchester Meadows is a favorite early Pink Floyd song, but Nick Mason stuff I don't really listen to. This is the remastered version of Ummagumma. And I've still got this in the shrink. I like to keep these with the hype sticker on it. And I already know what the inside looks like from the other vinyl copy that I have. Adam Hart Mother. I love this album. I love the title track, the Adam Hart Mother Suite. And I even think Alan's Psychedelic Breakfast is very cool. But it's something that you have to get into after repeated listens. You're not going to listen to this one time and be in love with it. So if you spend some time with it, I think you'll find that it's very rewarding. This is the remastered vinyl version of that. Same back cover, although there's no Adam Hart Mother title here. I meant to show this is on track records also. I'm sorry, not track. I'm getting my Who collection mixed up. This is on Harvest Records. And this is a really pristine copy. I got this on eBay, and surprisingly, I didn't pay an arm and a leg for it. And another one of my favorite Hypnosis covers also, which makes the next album all the more disappointing cover-wise, because I've never been in love with this cover for Metal, which is a pig's ear underwater with the waves reverberating or whatever it is. Just not a fan of the artwork. I think the music on here is tremendous, but I really feel, and I think Storm Thorgerson will admit also that he's not thrilled he wasn't thrilled in retrospect with this. This is the US version because it actually has Metal and Pink Floyd right here. And then the classic gatefold. And this is on Harvest Records. Just kind of one thing to note, interestingly, the font for the title and the song titles are in different fonts depending on what format this is on, so they look very different. On the cassette version, it's much bolder, a much bolder font, and on the CD, it's also a different font that they use. And I'm not sure why that is. Maybe because this font is very thin and it's difficult to see on the cassette. I am not sure. And then this is the remastered CD, which you can see even the coloring is different between the two. No song titles on the back of this one, although they are on the hype sticker. And then this has to be my contender for the worst Hypnosis cover. I hate this cover. I can't, I mean, I know it was a soundtrack, but I still feel like, considering it was Hypnosis, they could have come up with something a little more imaginative than just a still from the film out of focus. But I mean, it is what it is. This has got an extra hype sticker right here just to show that this is from the film La Vallée, or however you pronounce that. Of course, the remastered version on that. It's an alright. I mean, there's certain songs I like. What's the Deal and Childhood's End is pretty cool, and Free 4, but apart from that, I'm not a huge fan of that album. I don't think most people are. The first Pink Floyd compilation, I believe, that was released was Relics. This is on the Music for Pleasure label, MFP. The artwork was drawn by Nick Mason. There's another version where this is not colored pink. The sleeve is very thin, like most of the UK releases. And this was previously released on the Starline label in the UK, so I guess this is a reprint. I'm not sure what year this would have been released, but and then I've also got, this is a reissue of the American version of Relics. This is on the green Capitol label, which was the Capitol's budget label. I prefer, even though that was a Nick Mason drawing, I'm so used to this. This is what in high school, my first exposure to this album was this cover, and I always thought it was kind of creepy and cool. So I've kind of preferred this cover of it, but I'm glad I have both. And then my favorite Dark Side of the Moon album, it's a toss-up between this and Wish You Were Here, but Dark Side of the Moon, and I think some of it is nostalgia because my dad used to play this album all the time. It's what I grew up with. I know some of the songs, particularly Money and Time, have been played to death on classic radio, but as a whole, I love this album start to finish. Unfortunately, on this particular copy, I don't have any of the inserts or the stickers. For the first time, Pink Floyd got their own custom label. And obviously the artwork on here is one of the most iconic in rock and roll history. And then I've got the remastered version, again with a different hype sticker than just the traditional one that they put on here. And I believe there's a slight difference in the album cover here, particularly in the rainbow cover. The colors on here are a little bit darker, and even the area, even the prism on here is slightly different. I'm not sure if that's a UK versus a US thing because I use the UK artwork, but next album I have is Pink Floyd, A Nice Pair, which Capitol released, I believe it was after Pink Floyd left the label and to cash in on the success of Dark Side of the Moon. There was another sticker on here, but the original owner apparently tore it off so they could see the picture underneath. And this, obviously, for those of you who know, is the first two Pink Floyd albums. It's a double album. Piper at the Gates of Dawn is on side 1, and then you have Saucer Full of Secrets on disc 2. Show you one of the discs here. They came in picture sleeves. The inner sleeve. And this is again on the Harvest label. And these are all the different separate pictures that are on this album cover are supposed to be different puns, like visual puns. For instance, a fork in the road, fish in a kettle, something like that. I'm not sure what all these are, but if I spend enough time with it, frog in your throat, something like that. Then Wish You Were Here, depending on the day, my #1 or #2 favorite Pink Floyd album. This has got a different cover than the CD version that I have. And this one, this guy on fire is standing up a bit straighter. And the CD version and other versions I've seen, he's kind of leaning forward a little bit for the handshake. That's what the inner sleeve looks like. It's a nice thicker inner sleeve, which is great. Another custom label. This time they're on Columbia Records for the first time. And one of the things that I never realized until recently when I read it was that "Shine On You Crazy Diamond" is actually an anagram for Sid. Shine You Diamond, Sid. So just a little bit of trivia there. This is the remastered version. Just a black cover because it's got the original packaging on here. A couple different versions I've got of Animals. And this is the inner sleeve. And then another custom label here. This one has the sheep, or is it? It's hard to tell. Yeah, the sheep, I think, and then a sheep and a pig, and then this one has a dog. In keeping with the theme for the album. And of course, Dogs was originally titled Gotta Be Crazy, and Sheep was originally titled Raving and Drooling, and those were originally demoed before Wish You Were Here. And then the only difference in this version, I'm not going to bother showing anything more, but one has a barcode and one does not. I'm guessing this was probably a reissue from the 80s, hence the barcode. And then this is the remaster where the cover is noticeably lighter and has a different tint than this one. I prefer this one. It's darker, it fits the music more. I like Animals. It's probably maybe number 4. I think if I had to rank the Pink Floyd albums, for me, at least today, it's Dark Side of the Moon. Then I would go with Wish You Were Here, Metal, Animals, and then possibly Atom Heart Mother is number 5. But again, ask me next week and that might change. Which anybody who ranks albums is often saying the same thing. This is, of course, The Wall. Gatefold, everybody's seen. Then the inner sleeves have the lyrics. And the custom label. I like The Wall. Wall would probably be number 6, maybe. It's just so many, I've just heard the album so many times, and so many of the songs have been overplayed on classic rock radio. But I do think it's a solid album. Spread out over 2 discs. It's difficult to have that much quality on 2 discs, but this is obviously the remastered version. And then I've also got the remastered version of the, I guess what you might call the second Pink Floyd compilation, a collection of great dance songs. This is the final cut, which I don't dislike this album as much as some people do. Essentially, I mean, it is a Roger Waters solo album, but I do like it, almost like a sequel to The Wall, which originally this was going to be a soundtrack to the film of The Wall, and at one time was also going to be titled Spare Bricks. But then Roger developed it into a concept album. And unless you read the credits, you might not know that there's an inner sleeve there, but I won't bother pulling that out. You might not know that Richard Wright did not have any part in this album. He was gone by this point. Roger Waters, it was sort of a matter of Roger Waters either fired him or he left because he was sick of Roger Waters' control over the band. And as far as Roger Waters is concerned, this is the last Pink Floyd album. This again is the remastered version. Momentary Lapse of Reason. Which was the first Pink Floyd. I got this album on cassette when it came out, so technically it was the first Pink Floyd album I bought brand new when it came out. I got into Pink Floyd, even though I grew up listening to them, I didn't start buying Pink Floyd stuff until I was a senior in high school, and then I started getting all the Pink Floyd albums on cassette. I bought Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals, The Wall, and then started expanding out into the rest of their catalog, which I wasn't as familiar with. But of course, only David Gilmour and Nick Mason are on here. And technically, a lot of people have said, just like Final Cut was a Roger Waters solo album, for all intents and purposes, this is a David Gilmour solo album. This actually was still in the shrink when I bought it, but I took it out because I wanted to be able to see the gatefold. I don't know if I'll regret that decision later, but there's an inner sleeve in here too, which doesn't want to come out. Which has got the lyrics on it. I don't think Richard Wright plays at all on this. I think they recruited him later for the tour, which is why he's not featured in that gatefold picture. And even Nick Mason, I don't think Nick Mason plays a whole lot on it. I think he plays some, but not as much as on previous albums. I think his drumming skills had somewhat atrophied after Pink Floyd kind of, I don't know if technically they broke up. I mean, Roger Waters dissolved the band, or at least left the band. And then David Gilmour, after his About Face solo album did not do as well, decided that he'd have more success keeping the Pink Floyd name alive. And the rest, as they say, is history. This is the last Pink Floyd album I've got. It is the remastered version of The Division Bell. I've still got it in the shrink, so I can't show you the inner sleeve on it, but I always like this artwork from Hypnosis. And that is my Pink Floyd album collection. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate all your comments and hope everyone is safe and well.